Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fireside chat. My name is Scott Kirkin with 919 Marketing. I am joined today by Ryan Polakoff, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Nexterus, as well as Cornelius Grupp, who is the CEO and President of CCare. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Cornelius, tell us a little bit about CCare before we get into our conversations about how your company has been affected through this pandemic and how Nexterus has been there to help.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me today in this new approach of a fireside talk chat. I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for that invitation. CCare, we are a family-owned business, very similar to Nexterus. I'm also the next generation in our family business. So my father is still running the show. I shouldn't be saying still. You'd probably be a bit upset about that. Anyway, so we work closely together. We are a global company based out of Austria, and I'm leading the American operations here out of Baltimore. And CCare, we are a developer and manufacturer of prestige personal care products with focus on hair care, hair color, and a lot of skincare. So we produce and develop for indie brands or smaller companies that are looking to enter the prestige space, as well as the many of the Fortune 100 companies.
Excellent. And how long have you been working with Nexterus and a partnership with them?
For about 2 years, and that's pretty much as long as I've been here in the US.
All right. And now, from what you had traditionally done to what kind of the change you had to make since COVID has kind of dominated the news, take me a little bit through that and tell us what changes as a company you've made during these difficult times.
So we, as I said, part of our categories that we excel in is hair care and hair color, and we cater a lot to the professional part of that industry. That means the traditional distribution channels of our customers died very quickly or were shut down. So also our sort of demand was slowing down very quickly. But before that even happened here, we were watching very closely what was happening in Europe. And we thought as a team, how can we anticipate this pandemic coming here to the US, and how can we potentially participate in the fight of this pandemic? And being a personal care manufacturer, we have the capabilities to produce products such as disinfectants. So we sat with the team and we thought, what would be the quickest way and easiest way for us to convert some of our assets to manufacturing these products as we anticipated demand to slow down. We did that in the first instance to offer our assets to the local and statewide needs. So we immediately became member of an emergency manufacturer for Maryland, also for the federal government and for adjacent states. And so developed a FDA approved and registered hand sanitizer formula, the typical kind of gel-based formula that you probably know yourself, and offered that to the state. We did so for hospitals, doctors, first-line responders, and we're able to do so very quickly as we had the know-how in-house, which was fortunate. At the same time, we were also fortunate to have the raw materials in-house and some of the packaging, so we could launch it out on the market very quickly. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the supply chain challenges in just a bit. And so first was offering capacity to the state, and then in a second instance, we pivoted a little more and also launched an end consumer brand that we offer to the consumer who doesn't have access to central procurement agencies.
And Ryan, I would assume that is when Nexterus, after the kind of shift in what CCare was producing from normal hair care to now essential items, that's when it got really busy for you. So take us through kind of that shift in the way you work with CCare.
Sure, and it's a great point, Scott, and thank you again for having me. And it's always great to see you and my friend Cornelius. So thank you again. To that point, it falls in the line of supply chain support and technology and systems that we at Nexterus bring to Cornelius's team at Seacare. So that's utilization of our TMS Fusion Center, which provides the team at Seacare with complete visibility of inbound and outbound shipments, gives them the functionality to rate an order, track an order, and run over 60 kinds of reports, having 24/7 customer service available for his team to work on these special projects and anything else that they need for inbound and outbound material movement, and then always being available to provide supply chain strategy and advice and direction, and having conversations on here's what we'd like to do with the business, here's where our business model is going to change, we're going to pivot and start doing this, and our job is to then analyze the data, crunch the numbers, and put together a strategy from a supply chain perspective that allows Cornelius to hit his objectives.
And Cornelius, how do you work with Nexterus day to day, and how, because of the previous relationship that you've built with them over the years, how successful was the transition from what your normal product was to what your new product offering is?
Ryan, you already touched on the Fusion Center. That is something that is super exciting for our team to have this absolute transparency and have this real-time access to data and tracking and being able to communicate that very quickly to our customers. But this case was very different in the sense that we usually do very large shipments and very predictable shipments. So we get a large PO and it has a long lead time, and in these times where timelines that usually were unthought of are now becoming the norm, we managed to set up a very different way of delivering our products. And I will need to explain a little bit more here, because we are dealing with institutions, but institutions who need a couple of thousand hand sanitizers, so not truckloads. A smaller army barrack or police force or a PD, a local PD that will need 2,000 hand sanitizers here, a couple of hundred there, and that is not possible to do with sort of UPS shipments. And that's why we immediately reached out to our partners at Nexterus and said, how can we set this up very quickly? We have, as Ryan said, a very capable key account manager who's always available. And then, of course, I can also reach out to Ryan and ask. And then the team got together very quickly, and we set up a good process to which people can order from us directly, and we can deliver that product very direct, almost as a drop shipment, basically, to them in these kind of awkward middle sizes. And I think that is possible due to the close partnership, the very clear and close taken care of by our key account manager, and that combined with that technology that is so quickly and easy to fuse with our system that we only just built. So how long did it take, Ryan? 2 weeks maximum to set all of that up?
Yeah, it's just about 2 weeks. Yep.
Yeah, and it's been running smooth ever since.
And I'd have to imagine that, Ryan, there's been a trust that's been built between the two of you, or between the two companies, over the last couple of years that made the transition as seamless as possible, based on what Cornelius said.
And you hit the nail on the head, Scott. And that's where we're very thankful and blessed to have a partnership with Seacare, but where it's fun for guys like Cornelius and I, who are both the next generation of the family business within our own companies. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to strategize on, even outside of the business partnership, on how we can help each other. And it's been a fantastic ride.
Have there been challenges for you, Cornelius, through this whole process? I'm sure, obviously you're talking about a high demand product. So I'm sure there's been plenty of inquiries. And what about from a supply chain standpoint? Have there been any hiccups based on the demand of other essential items that are being ordered during this time?
Absolutely. Number one, we are in unprecedented times. And I think the sheer speed of things was or is still amazing to see in terms of how quickly we are asked to react. And they really had nothing to do with a traditional timeline, right? Any request, anything that would come our way was not a couple of weeks from now, it's always yesterday. Mm-hmm. And that combined with immense stress on the supply chain in terms of China had been shut down, trade wars kind of waging, and the sudden spike in demand of these kind of bottles of the alcohol, of the carbomers that you need for this product has been very, very challenging and has only allowed for a somewhat erratic supply chain. So I think it was almost a race to the finish line who would be able to solve this problem the quickest. And it put a tremendous strain on anyone from manufacturing to logistics. I mean, Ryan, I'm sure you can tell a good story about that.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of ties into, some of the short-term concerns that we've seen and, and Cornelius hit the nail on the head with some of it, which is demand volatility, capacity constraints, uncertainty and reliability of what the core traditional supplier network has been. And then it's even led companies across all industries, not supply chain specific by any stretch, to ask for things such as flexible or deferred payment terms, and unfortunately, in some cases, leading to furloughs and layoffs. So the key really is looking at something like the supply chain as the backbone of the organization for a manufacturer, distributor, or retailer, and saying, what can we do differently in these phases to help mitigate this and get through these unprecedented times?
And I noticed that both of you are obviously back in your offices. Companies are operating, but by no means is this behind us. I'd imagine there are still concerns about disruptions as we move forward. Cornelius, is that accurate?
Absolutely. We have stayed open as an essential business, have taken precautions that I'm sure many have now heard of other industries. Most of our back office people are still working from home, but our production is open. So bringing people into the site, we've taken all necessary precautions and beyond to keep our workforce safe. This is also the reason why I feel very safe to go to the office every day. And I think if I go here, that shows everybody that we are a safe place to come to. But nevertheless, I mean, the volatility you talked about and also the outlook in terms of doing a classic forecast adjustment is very, very challenging. And I don't think it's easy to predict how our consumer behavior is going to change even when we open up. We have seen retail chains already filing for bankruptcy, which is going to affect it dramatically. So we've internally find it very, very hard to produce forecasts. So how we are doing it, we are working on sensitivity projections to see what if, so that we can react very, very quickly should the need arise.
And Ryan, what's the Nexterus plan? I'd imagine that nobody obviously planned for anything like what we have just gone through, but I'd imagine now we're going to start planning for potential things in the future to be as ready as we can be should another shutdown happen. So what steps has Nexterus taken along those lines?
Well, in the last 60 days, again, same status as C-Care, been deemed an essential business in the transportation and logistics service industry. So we actually shut our building down, our offices down for the last 60 days. But due to the technology that we've gotten built and getting our staff retrained and really entrenched in things such as Ring Central and Zoom and Microsoft Teams, we've been able to still provide service to customers like C-Care without missing a beat. So it's really, it's been good of us to just embrace the technology and break down some old silos that used to exist kind of across company and say, let's utilize these tools we have to keep providing service. And I think if anything, this COVID-19 has highlighted opportunities across the supply chain to where we can come out probably a little bit stronger. And again, companies are really saying, wow, and Cornelius and his team have done a great job of this, but other companies are looking to say, supply chain really needs a seat at the table now. Whereas before it was a back-end thought and function, and it'll create the need to build deeper supplier networks. It'll create the need to scenario plan. And this is anything from the logistics side and making sure that we have increased visibility on inbound and outbound transportation. It's geo-optimizing distribution centers and factories to make sure that they are in the right locations around the world, the physical layout of those buildings, and then the corresponding inventory strategy around all that.
Yeah, Cornelius, I'd like for you to expand on that a little bit on from the CEO president standpoint of a supplier. what advice would you give to other businesses that are rebuilding their supply chain?
Without completely giving away our business intelligence, I think it needs to be a combination similar to the disaster planning that Ryan touched on. We saw that some companies that we work with, who out of maybe laziness or ease of transactions, stuck with only a very thin supplier network, were put under serious pressure very, very quickly. So being able to have multiple suppliers that are able to be flexible and provide you with a similar service, and probably a combination of localization and international support, is going to continue to be key. Many of our big customers were already set up like that, but we are seeing some of our smaller customers who only had one backup supplier were put under tremendous pressure. So either increasing some of your in-house capabilities rather than completely outsourcing everything that you do, and being very deeply entrenched and deeply connected with your supply chain, I always found is key per se. But if you had not spent time and effort on that, then this should at least be their wake-up call to spend more time working with your suppliers, give them some attention, and I'm sure they'll be open and happy to work with you to build a more resilient and robust supply chain for the future.
And Ryan, I'm sure a lot of those CEOs are taking that kind of advice and looking at some alternatives on how to change their process. How does Nexterus help companies that maybe haven't outsourced that before? What's the benefit of that?
And again, I think it's kind of this overarching theme of this conversation is really the scenario planning, the contingency planning, the alternative sources of supply around the supply chain that you may have. So I think the best advice from this side is really the analytics and the solutions and the service provider side is prepare for the comeback. It will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And again, embrace the technology, utilize it, and whether it's another pandemic or a shift in demand or a supplier closes down or any shift you want to make to the business, that will have a supply chain impact. So it's better to model that, plan for those scenarios, have that optimal simulation in hand, and then when you're ready, whenever that new trigger event is introduced into the network, you've got that backup plan to roll over to and roll out to the network.
Cornelius, I'm curious, as we move along here, hand sanitizer, the need of hand sanitizer is not going to go away. So when hair care products come back to being more essential, in addition to now hand sanitizers, what kind of shifting does C-Care have to make to be able to supply everything when it's all needed?
That's a very good question. As I said, it remains to be seen how that demand will rebound and how quickly it will rebound. Also looking at some of the countries in Europe that are opening up, the demand is coming back, but not at the same speed. So there will definitely have to be some juggling, but as always, we will keep our promises to our customers and we'll be able to juggle around that. I also think that the hand sanitizer is going to stay and probably will be incorporated in our routines outside of our homes. I also anticipate that when we venture out more, we want to be able to protect ourselves outside of our own four walls. So we will adjust around that, but I definitely anticipate that our behavior around disinfecting and cleanliness will stay or even increase.
Ryan, is there a silver lining in all of this? Are there going to be changes in the trends, or what have you learned and Nexterus learned through all of this that's going to benefit us all moving forward?
I think for us on the supply chain side, it's bringing what has typically been, and Cornelius touched on this too, the classic sensitivity analysis and the what if, bringing that really from the background in a reactive state and bringing it to proactive. So some of the things we're working on as part of our system is upgrading our Fusion Center platform from a transportation system to a supply chain system. So in the next iteration that comes out in 2021, clients will be able to utilize that software to do things beyond transportation and start this simulation process that we've been discussing of, if X happens by Y, here's what I do at Z.
Excellent. Well, this was a really good conversation. Cornelius and Ryan, I thank you both for joining us and educating us on everything we've learned during, as you both put it, something we've never seen before, right? So I thank you both for your time and hope everyone enjoyed the chat, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Take care.